Hey, Scott Jordan here for Jancast number 126 for Thursday, June 30th, 2022. And we have a special guest with us today. Mark, would you like to do the introduction?
We have with us Mili Washington. Mili Washington is Standards Director for the IICRC, and we are incredibly indebted to you and honored to have you on the call. Thank you, Mili.
Thank you, Mark. I'm happy to be here. Hello. Hi, everyone.
The thousands and thousands of viewers, yes. So,
yes, it could be hundreds of thousands, Scott. You know,
yeah,
at one point
depends. If I hold up a Corona beer, it might push us over the top because that's one of our biggest, one of our best viewed shows was at the start of the COVID thing. And I remember back then, Mili, they were talking about how Corona beer might have some connection with COVID. And I held up a beer saying this is no connection. That was our top viewed show over, I don't know what it was, 50,000 views or something like that. But,
yeah, it went viral, I think, because of the beer. You know, I thought that was awesome.
Yeah. So if you want to watch that show, I'll put it in a link below. But so, Mark, you've been away. What have you been doing? Give us an update.
Well, I'm glad you asked, Scott. I'm unprepared for that question. Over the last couple of weeks, I've been definitely on the road a lot, and one of the things I can say about that, it is so refreshing to be able to meet with people face to face and live again. We just went through something none of us have ever really experienced with the shutdown of the world. Yep. We all became literally a two-dimensional figure on a screen to everybody for 2 years. So to actually get out and engage with people one-on-one is fantastic. And where it's so powerful, Scott, is when you get involved with doing training. It's one thing to do to see a video of somebody that's trying to share information, but it's completely different from a live training event where you're actually getting, almost a mentorship kind of relationship with the people that are in there. And so that's what I've been up to and doing that quite a bit, and got some others scheduled for this summer. It's that time of year when everybody kind of schedules their training. But one of the things that was the reason why, Mili, we were so excited about having you on is because we have been in discussions in the past regarding training and the fact that it's unlike things like, I don't know, toilet paper and disinfectants and all those things that went through periods of time where you just couldn't get it. There really has not been, an allocation or a shortage of available training and knowledge. And so that's something we've been talking about a lot. And, the things that we've talked about in the past is, training is great, knowledge is great, implementation of knowledge is really what training's about. But the bottom line is that you can't really train well unless you know what the target is. What are you trying to achieve? What have you established as being the definition of a successful outcome of training? Does it meet any kind of, I don't know, what's the word I'm looking for there? Does it meet any kind of standard? Well, so with all that said, it was just kind of like perfect to have you on and be able to have conversations about that. And although I've kind of talked about, my definitions for standards, we, kind of wanted to pose that question to you. So, what are standards, Mili? I mean, your background as the standards director for the IICRC is so powerful. IICRC does some of the very best standards in the entire industry. And I've been engaged with other associations that also acknowledge IICRC's expertise and leadership in the standards development. And you've heard me say that to you in the past. But I know also that you guide other people that are doing standards for other industries too. What's that association that you were past president of?
SES, which is the Society for Standards Professionals. I am on the SES board of directors, currently as the past president. But it's it's a niche organization for very special people who do standards, because we're a small group. That's just how it is. And so SES provides training, education, conferences, networking for standards professionals, and I've been involved with them for over a decade. I've been on the board almost a decade, and it's a great organization. It's a professional association for folks like me, for folks like you, Mark, standards developers, standards staff, standards developing organizations.
Other associations that would be part of that would be groups like ISO, or is that part of that, or they're kind of well known in the manufacturing circles?
Sure, and ISO is more the international body that individual countries feed into. So for the US, it would be ANSI, the American National Standards Institute. And ANSI also accredits IICRC as a standards developing organization. SES has individual and organizational members like NFPA, like ASHRAE, ASTM, NIST, National Institute of Standards and Technology. So a lot of domestic and international, but the ISO connection is more through ANSI. So it's IICRC, ANSI, ISO. That's sort of the hierarchy. But we all feed into the great ISO ultimately.
Wow.
What kind of standards?
Can I ask one question? Let me jump in here.
Yes.
How did you end up getting into this field, Mili?
Okay, so I can speak for the entire standards professionals when I say that none of us really go to school for this, because it's still, it's just one of those things that you sort of fall into. Which is what happened with me. I used to be with the American Industrial Hygiene Association, AIHA, for a good number of years in another capacity. And there was an opening for a standards manager. And I thought, you know what? That sounds really good. I want to try it, not knowing anything about it. So this is how, jump first, think afterwards. And it was a good fit. I enjoyed it. So then I joined SES and I got my certifications in standards development, and 15 odd years later, this is what I love to do. It sounds a bit masochistic, but it's enjoyable for those of us who found a home in standards.
Yeah.
Well, I would have been kind of amazed at how you've inspired others to go down that path. I think of Cheryl Smith, for example, with the IICRC. She's been so inspired to follow in your footsteps as a career path, and my hat's off to her too for
absolutely. Yeah, Mark, Cheryl's such an asset. I don't know what I would have done I don't know what I did before she was doing this. So no, it's wonderful. It's nice to be able to share that with other staff and also other organizations, right? To be able to impress on others the importance of standards and why they're important and why it's important to be a player in this field. I always joke about it, but it's a very serious matter that if you're not at the standards table, you may be on the menu, because right?
That's a good way of putting it.
Yeah, I mean, because if you've not had a say in anything that goes into the content of a standard, then you're surprised when it's published, and that's not a good place to be at. So for, whether it's Bullen with your products, you want to make sure that you have a say in it, that you have a vote in it. And so it's important, and it's really wonderful to see more organizations as stakeholders participating, realizing the importance, the significance of that, and being represented on several committees. So I think as a team, as an industry, as cross sections of the industry, that's how we grow the industry, is by coming together, putting together expertise, and coming up with these standards, which are essentially documents that provide guidance to the entire industry.
Well, really, the standards really level the playing field for everybody, which, in our case, we have a couple carpet products that are approved through the IICRC. And without the standards, it's kind of like everybody's just kind of throwing stuff against the wall, and you don't know, what's equal, what's not equal. So it's kind of Wild West without standards, right?
Absolutely. And, these are consensus-based standards, which means, technically they're voluntary, right? If you don't follow a standard, there is no legal consequence for that. But the reality is that you lose your market share if you're not following a standard and what the standard dictates and what the standard says you should be doing in a particular, whether you're an inspector or whether you're a restorer or a mediator, a cleaner, what are the things that you should be doing? What are the things that are recommended? And if you're not following those things, then you essentially get edged out of your market share because someone else is doing that, and customers are looking for that, right? So it's ultimately it's economics.
Millie, maybe you could share for our listening audience the arena that IICRC plays in the world. What do they represent? What kind of standards have they produced in the past? And maybe, what's in the works right now? I kind of stacked the deck on that question because I kind of know. But,
how much time do you have? Well, I can touch on it. We have been doing standards for quite a while now and ANSI accredited since 2005. We have standards in the inspection, cleaning, and restoration industries. So I'll give you a couple of examples of our already published standards. We have the 500, which is water damage restoration, which is our, biggest, most, in some eyes, maybe the most significant standard. We also have the 520, which is mold remediation. And all of these standards that are published get revised and republished on a 5-year cycle, or we try, or 5-year cycle, because that's the ANSI requirement. Because, we want to keep up with anything that's changed in the industry, and we want to make sure that our documents are absolutely up to date. So that's why that revision cycle. We also have the S220, which is inspection of hard surface floor coverings, as well as another inspection standard, the S800, which is professional inspection of textile floor coverings. So a couple of inspection standards, water, mold, of course. We have the 540, which is a standard for trauma and crime scene cleanup, which is gearing up. Yeah, it's a very interesting standard, I will tell you that. I used to sit in on their calls, and I mean, some of the stuff you hear and learn is, and I think that's a big part of, participation in standards as an individual, is you may be bringing a lot to the table, but you're also learning a lot from your peers. And, and I think Mark can attest to that. Everyone's learning. We're all kind of exchanging information and making sure that what gets put out as a published document really is a result of that process. So not to digress, but okay. And then we have a couple of fire standards that are coming up soonish. We have S700, which is a general professional fire and smoke damage restoration standard, as well as the S760, which is wildfire restoration standard. Let's see, we have some interesting ones as well. I think they're all interesting, but I think the S900, which is currently in development, and that one is for remediation of drug residues and associated chemical waste. So yeah,
like
very
like meth laboratories in hotel rooms.
Absolutely, yes. Wow. And these are the reason we write standards is because we've identified a gap in the industry. There is no guidance for some of these things, and it's sort of a wild, wild west. So when experts come together and write standards, and I should say IICRC is not technically writing the standard, we just sort of host the party. We're like, come, we'll give you all the tools that you need. We are ANSI accredited, so we follow that process, and it is a very rigorous process. But it's the experts who are coming to the table and who are putting their heads together and writing the standard. IICRC does not have a vote. And that's usually a misconception. Well, IICRC doesn't, want that, or IICRC has no say. It's the marks and the, all the other consensus body members who vote on the standard and who have a say in what goes in. Let's see, what else can I tell you? Of course, we have the S100 cleaning of carpet cleaning standard, essentially. And then, like I said, we're working on several new standards. We have a contents remediation standard. We have the 2 fire standards that are coming up. We also have a sort of the S500, but for commercial structures. So water damage restoration for commercial structures. That's in the works at this time. So a lot of different things that we have not done before. We have an HVAC standard S590, which is in the works. And we're also hoping when the time is right to write a standard for leather furnishings.
Wow.
So, and those are our standards, and those are all being developed using the ANSI process for writing standards. And then in addition to those, we also have a couple of field guides that are in the works. Safety and health field guides. We have one for professional cleaners and the other for disaster restoration professionals. And we are hoping that the first of the two, the field guide for cleaners, will be published later on this year.
Wow.
So what's really interesting, and I love that overview of it, and there's the 400 series as well that I'm involved with. But the
why don't you tell us about the 400 and the 410, please?
Well, the 400 is fascinating to me because I've been engaged with the cleaning industry like my whole life. I was born in a hospital room where a training class was going on for cleaning. So I just
was that a John Hopkins?
So it's the S400 is a cleaning standard for the commercial built environment, and it's fascinating, really. The subject matter experts that are involved have taught me a lot. I share what I know, which is usually unique and novel, and they do the same, and you end up just sharing all this information and becoming pretty nicely well versed. And you always pick up in every committee meeting something rather new, as a new spin, a new way to look at something, or a new challenge that you really hadn't thought about. So that's the S400, and it's been a lot of fun. The other standard that I'm involved with is the S410, which is infection control for the commercial built environment. And that one is so sophisticated. I am just surrounded by people who are so much smarter than me. It's just amazing. But there's a lot of standards written for infection control for healthcare, but very few that go outside the healthcare arena and look at what does John Q. Public need to think about in his office, or what does hospitality need to deal with in hotel and restaurants. And so the commercial built environment concept takes a lot of standards that are really strict for healthcare and takes a look at what's the real life scenario here that we need to try to accomplish in a traditional commercial built environment. And that one has been a fantastic learning curve for me. I mean, I've been able to share things that people involved with cleaning would know. And some of that is new news to the people on that committee. And a lot of them are professionals in infection control and epidemiology. And so they talk at a level that's 30,000 feet, and I just, wow, I just want to learn that word. That would be great, So it's really a great group. And then Mili, as you know, one of the things I'm probably most proud of is that I was selected to be an intermediary between those two committees because they overlapped. And I think you were primarily involved of getting me selected to be the chair of the 400-410 joint subcommittee. And I'm very grateful to have that role. But, one of the questions that comes up all the time regarding all this stuff is, how do these really get used? Is it really just used as a way of creating curriculum, or, are there deeper implications of a standard?
That's a great question. The standard, essentially what it is common terminology, right? Industry accepted language and terminology derived by consensus that then allows the industry to talk more universally about procedures, about methods that should be followed. And so, it's everyone that should be using it, that should be aware of a standard, whether it's customers, although that is rare, but certainly companies that are involved in providing the service, whether it's cleaning or restoration or inspection, should certainly be aware of it and should be following the standards. It's sort of a set of best practices, or what you should be doing. And like I said, if you are not, as a company or as a trainer or as someone starting out in the industry, if you're not learning about what is in the standards, then you get left behind.
Yeah.
Because, this is, our standards are a result of hours and hours and hours of debates by industry experts, agreed upon consensus. Then we have public review, which allows anyone who's a stakeholder in the industry to review and comment on the standards. So it's a laborious, painstaking process, but in the end, the standard represents the industry. It does not represent any one participant. And so therefore, I would say that it behooves everyone to be aware and to follow the standard. Customers demand quality, they demand reliability, safety, effectiveness, and all of those things come as results of following industry standards.
Yeah.
So
I can tell you one of my favorite things about standards, Mili, is, I'm doing a lot of training and doing training. I'll end up sometimes having not just frontline workers, but team leaders and supervisors and CEOs and entrepreneurs and, all kinds of people who want to get information. And my favorite part of standards is this isn't just my opinion that I'm teaching. It's not just me saying so. This is what the standard is all about, and standardizing the industry to kind of use this similar terminology. That's been a big part of it. People call the same thing different words here in the US and then throughout the rest of the world. So there's even that communication problem that gets solved a little bit with standards. But more importantly, I'm able very often to kind of point to a standard or point to a document that was created with a standard in mind to meet, and say this is kind of the consensus of the world. It's not just my opinion. So that's kind of one of my
gives a lot more credit. Gives a lot more credibility when you explain it the way you and Mili have explained it. What's the role of and some of the things that you talked about with the insurance industry? Because there's some linkage there, isn't there, between standards and some of the things involved?
For sure, absolutely. Because, the standard, for example, the S500 lays out what category 1, 2, and 3 are.
Yeah.
And so based on what the standard says and what is happening in the field with a particular restorer or restoration company, the insurance industry reviews the standard, and based on what the standard says, then goes through with the claims and what they pay out and things like that. And so one of the things that we've been trying to do is to get better participation from the insurance industry, because we want to hear from them. They are stakeholders and it impacts them. And that's always an ongoing thing for us, is to have balance on our committees, to have a wide range of stakeholders, because it impacts so many different sectors of the industry. So yes, the insurance industry is impacted, and we are constantly trying to make sure that there's better representation from that side.
Well, it's important for them to make sure the job gets done right. So if the person doing the job is following the standard, and if it's been fully vetted properly, then they would be assured that the job's going to be done right. Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah.
Win-win.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, one of the other things that's always impressed me with being involved in these standards, it's part of the consensus body or a chair of a chapter or a joint subcommittee, is that people always ask, well, how do I get involved? And they don't realize that you can't buy your way into these positions. There's a very serious vetting process that goes on, which is an application that gets reviewed by all members. And, ultimately you have to be approved at, well, you can explain that, Mili, but at many levels before you can actually go in. So it's not just, hey, you're my buddy, you can join, it's not like that.
No, you're right. It's what we do is an open call for membership, and we invite volunteers to participate in the development of standards. There's usually an online application form, and you submit an application. We have a defined period during which we accept applications. It's not the buddy system. It really is based on experience and expertise. We also have to consider things like balance on the committee. We cannot have a committee of 15 members and all 15 represent one side. You know, we can't have all producers. We have to have producers, we have to have users, and we have to have what we call general interest, people who don't fall in either producer or user interest category. So there are many requirements from ANSI that we must follow in order to have a balanced committee. Each application is reviewed, and we really almost try to do a blind review where we don't know who the person is, but sort of, you know, go through the expertise and what they have done, whether they have any experience in standards writing, and what they represent, who they represent, what interest category they represent. And then we try to put together a balanced committee. We also have people that we just place as non-voting members. So they're sort of like our backup, you know, if we need assistance on a particular section or chapter, then we can reach out to them. So there's many avenues for participation, whether it's on the committee, whether it's through public review, submitting comments, that's participation, and it gives you a voice. So yeah, be at the table, because it's you know, it serves you well, it serves your company well to be represented at a standards developing committee.
Yeah, we can put below the video and the show notes contact info that you can
Absolutely.
Yeah, and we've got to use in quotes your quote right there. If you're not in the standard, you're on the menu or something like that. I thought that is fantastic.
Yeah. Great.
We're so grateful that you spent this time with us, Mili.
Yeah, it's very interesting.
It's a pleasure. Thank
very
you.
meaningful.
I had no idea there's that many things going on over there. So
Lots of
that's
balls.
a lot of balls to juggle at the same time, right?
You know what they say, keep the glass ones in the air and let the plastic ones fall.
Another one.
I like that.
Well, thanks very much for joining us on Jancast number 126, and we'll send you a link so you can promote this out to your fellow standards people, and hopefully it'll generate some traffic for some potential new members to join up.
Sounds good.
Sure.
Scott,
If it wins an Emmy, you'll get like checks in the mail with royalties and stuff.
You know, I'm expecting that now. It's all of a sudden on my list of things happen. So that was too long, wasn't it, Scott?
No, that's okay. That's okay.
Well,
we're recording this show a couple of days before 4th of July, so let's all be careful out there. There's probably a standard for fireworks.
Yep.
Right?
Keep your fingers.
Yeah. So have a great holiday and stay safe, right?
And thank you, Mili, and
thank you.
Thanks everybody for watching.
Yep. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.